Ladies and gentlemen, it is my greatest honor to present the Robert F. Kennedy Ripple of Hope Award to Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for being you. More about that. First, about the ripple of hope. More than 50 years after Bobby Kennedy spoke those immortal words, they remain our inspiration still. For Bobby Kennedy, hope was a weighty word. His hope was an irrepressible insistence on the possibilities of the future. A firm faith that though numberless diverse acts of courage, standing up for an ideal, improving the lot of others, striking out against injustice, we can forge a more perfect, equal, and good world. It's a great honor to receive this Ripple of Hope Award, such a wonderful tribute, this whole occasion, to Senator Robert Kennedy and his belief in the power of hope. And it is a joy to join for this beautiful celebration of Robert Kennedy's human rights, which has turned Bobby's ripple of hope into a tsunami for the world, of hope for the world. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Carrie, for your outstanding leadership, for carrying on your father's work to promote and defend human rights around the world, including farm workers, as you mentioned tonight, which has long been a value for your family. Your father and mother marched with Cesar Chavez, and this week the House was proud to pass the Farm Workforce Modernization Act, respecting the dignity and rights of farm workers. I'm so glad that so many of my colleagues are here. If you're still here, please stand so we can thank you, members of the House. And Adam Schiff has joined us since then. He wasn't here earlier. It's an honor to be here on the program with so many Kennedys, including my friend Ted Kennedy Jr. He didn't say anything about sailing and my saying, don't turn on the engine, we're just sailing through. Ted Kennedy would want us to do it that way. So again, this is personal as well, officially satisfying for me. And what a joy to be introduced by Congressman Joe Kennedy. Joe, how proud your grandfather will be to see you carry on his dogged defense for the downtrodden. Wasn't he wonderful? Wouldn't you like to be introduced by Joe Kennedy? I thank the entire Kennedy family for their friendship and express the Pelosi family love that we have for Ethel. Isn't Ethel just wonderful? Thank you, Ethel, for being you and inspiring so much else. I'm overjoyed to share this moment with my family, who are here, my source of hope, my husband, Paul. 3 of my children are here, Nancy, Corinne, Christine, and Alexandra. 3 of my grandchildren, Paul, Thomas, and Octavio. It's a pleasure to share. You can give them an applause. My college roommates and classmates are here, Rita Meyer and Celia Haggerty and Mary Beta, and other of our friends, Paul Tagliabue and Chan. Thank you so much for being with us. It's a pleasure to share in this celebration with so many members, not only of my official family in the House of Representatives. And let me express my congratulations to tonight's awardees. Now, let me just say this. I've violated one of my standing principles tonight. I had told my staff over the years, make sure I'm never on the program following a writer. Wasn't she wonderful? Isn't she wonderful? J.K. Rowling, Glenn Tolman, and my dear friend Wendy Abrams, they have something in common, the 3 of them. They're all magicians. J.K. Rowling, you encouraged many, many, many children, more than you could imagine, to read. when I saw all those Kennedys on the stage, I was thinking of all the kids when we took our grandchildren late at night to be the first at 1 minute after midnight to be able to buy Harry Potter books all over California and the country. A magician you are in so many ways, turning your compassion into improving the lives of so many children. And Glenn, oh my goodness, wasn't he wonderful? A magician, turning his technological and entrepreneurial spirit into improving the health of the American people. And by the way, Glenn, I think Sam is a future Robert Kennedy Human Rights Awardee. Would that be fair? What a question. And Wendy Abrams, she's just spectacular. She's a magician as well, turning her passion, her commitment, her persistence, it's true of her, into making a difference in our world. Just as Robert Kennedy said, we have to make a difference. She not only makes a difference, she makes great chocolate chip cookies, too, on top of it all. Everybody loves Wendy. Thank you, Wendy, for your leadership. So personally and officially, I'm very honored to receive this Ripple of Hope Award, which for decades has celebrated men and women around the world who embody Bobby's belief that one person can make a difference, and each of us should try, he said. To receive this award means much to me, especially personally in the D'Alessandro family where I was raised. As dear Joe mentioned, in Baltimore, we were raised in the same Kennedy conviction that public service was a noble cause and that we all had a responsibility to help those in need. And when Carrie referenced that we're all God's children earlier, it reminded me of how we were brought up to believe that there's a spark of the divinity in every person in this world, and that we must respect that spark of divinity and be good stewards of everyone of God's children. And not only that, to respect the spark of divinity we have within ourselves and the responsibility that goes with it. For my siblings, indeed our whole generation, the name Bobby Kennedy was a source of great excitement, symbolizing his irrepressible youth, the future, and of course, hope. Now, I say that, just another connection. My brother Tommy, who was at the time the mayor of Baltimore, in his 30s, young, a big fan of Bobby Kennedy, a big supporter of his in the presidential election, we all continue to be inspired by Bobby from all these years later. Bobby knew that America's story is a story of hope. From the hopeful vision of our founders to declare independence and establish a new nation based on the ideal all are created equal, to the hopeful dreams of pioneers and immigrants, and aren't we proud of the immigrants to America who make America so great? Hopeful immigrants who cross continents and oceans to seek a better future, and to the hopeful courage of generations of suffragists and activists, and of our men and women in uniform who sacrificed so much to build a better future for America. In 1964, this is one of my favorite stories. In 1964, Attorney General Bobby spoke to the World Assembly of Youth about his hopes for the future, saying this, and I quote, Glenn, I thought of when you were speaking of this, modern industry gives us the capacity for great wealth, but do we have the capacity to make that wealth meaningful to the poor of the world? In that speech, he quoted the historian Arnold Toynbee, who called this, quote, the first age since the dawn of history in which mankind has dared to believe it practicable to make the benefits of civilization available to the human race. Now, my colleagues are used to me always quoting Toynbee, and this is, so that meant so much to me to be reading that Bobby had made that speech. And I knew when he did, but then to refer back to it. Because think of what Toynbee did. In his study of history, Toynbee wrote about the role that hope could play in shaping the future of a nation and its future. At the beginning of a hopeful country, he said, the political leadership formed a creative minority that inspired and led the flowering of civilization. But in some nations, leader became a dominant minority of exploiters, focused on their own wealth and power. Those competing mindsets, hopeful, exploitive, those competing mindsets and motivations create schisms in the body social and schisms in the soul of the body politic. Does that sound familiar? Sometimes people ask me, where is hope? Where is hope? I say hope is where it always has been, sitting right there between faith and charity. Think of Bobby's words, which I was honored to read at Arlington National Cemetery last year at the memorial marking 50 years since his death. What an honor that was for me. There were many of us who read, but I was included among them. Bobby spoke of a quote, a nation united not on every issue, but in the enduring faith that we are to be free, that we have the chance for a decent life, that the natural condition of humanity is not degradation, but dignity. This is the faith that binds us together as Americans. It is this faith that shaped this nation. It is this faith that shall preserve us. As Bobby knew, it is that faith in freedom and goodness of others that gives us hope. And we need hope in the face of all the challenges of our time, whether it's the assault on our Constitution. Thank you, Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, Elliot Engel, they're here. The three of the leaders in that fight and my other colleagues, or whether it's the climate crisis, a challenge to this generation, or the crisis of income disparity. Looking around this room, I see faith and human goodness. I see it in the work of the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, which for decades has made extraordinary progress to, in Bobby's words, tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of the world. And I see it in the courage of America's young people, including Deandra Jones. Are you still here, Deandra? You were wonderful. Wasn't he great? For dreamers, for women's freedoms, for climate action, and sadly, in the case of gun violence, for marching for their lives. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you to the Kennedy family for your leadership. Thank you for the honor of this Ripple of Hope Award, which I will display with great pride in the Speaker's office in the Capitol of the United States. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you. Thank you.